inshallah, with Sister Yamina. And in this episode, inshallah, we'll continue our discussion from last time. Last time, mashallah, our discussion has revolved around like the meaning of looking at things with both sides, so that when we look at things, we don't only see them as things that have a power within their own, but we see them as signs pointing towards their creator. We had a lot of discussion that could be summarized in the dua of Allahumma atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirah hasana, that when we're asking for both good in this world and in the hereafter, because this world is just our connection to the hereafter. And then we went through the ayat showing how everything in heavens and earth is prostrating to God, and that what we call laws of creation or laws of nature are actually all signs pointing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the discussion, I think we stopped somewhere around verse number 15, and with this I will ask first if anyone wanted to share any of their reflections before we ask Sister Yamina to start, inshallah. So we can keep the comments till the end and get an early start. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We're ready for you, Sister Yamina.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على رسولنا محمد وعلى أصحابه وأهله أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Welcome again to Always Receiving Nur's weekly classes on Surah Al-Ra'd. May we always be open to receiving the light of divine guidance in this surah, and may we live with that hidayah, that guidance, inshallah. So as Dr. Alia reminded us, last week we learned again the meaning of what one sustainer, one Rabb means. The fact that we have only one sustainer, one Rabb of all that exists, meaning that He alone gives life to all, He alone takes care of all and provides for all. And how do we know that? Because, as Alia reminded us, everything is an ayah, everything points back to Him, makes Him known. Everything, how? Because everything follows and obeys His laws of rububiyyah, His laws of rahmah, His laws of sustaining life, all the laws that we usually call the laws of nature. They are actually sunnatullah. And even the shadows at the end of ayah 15, even the shadows follow the rules of creation. So everything is in a state of prostration to Him, in a state of obedience to His laws. So either we ask Him alone for help and protection, or we live a miserable life at the mercy of created beings who have no power to fulfill our desires or to even hear our call. And that was the last two ayat that we reflected on last week, which was ayah 14 and 15 of Surah Al-Ra'd. In ayah 14, we're told, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم له دعوة الحق والذين يدعون من دونه لا يستجيبون لهم بشيء إلا كباسط كفيه إلى الماء ليبلغ فاه وما هو ببالغه وما دعاء الكافرين إلا في ضلال. And in ayah 15, ولله يسجد من في السماوات والأرض طوعا وكرها وظلالهم بالغدو والآصال. The call, the prayer of truth is made to him alone, since those whom they call instead of God cannot respond to them in any way. It is like someone who stretches his cupped hands, his open hands towards water, hoping that it will reach his mouth. It never gets there. Hence, the call or the prayer of those who deny the truth is all in vain. It only goes astray. Before God prostrates themselves all that are in the heavens and on earth, willingly or unwillingly, as do their shadows in the mornings and the evenings. And the next ayah is ayah 16, and it says, قُلْ مَنْ رَبُّ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ قُلِ اللَّهُ قُلْ أَفَاتَّخَذْتُمْ مِنْ دُونِهِ أَوْلِيَاءَ لَا يَمْلِكُونَ لِأَنْفُسِهِمْ نَفْعًا وَلَا ضَرًّا قُلْ هَلْ يَسْتَوِي الْأَعْمَى وَالْبَصِيرُ أَمْ هَلْ تَسْتَوِي الظُّلُمَاتُ وَالنُّورُ أَمْ جَعَلُوا لِلَّهِ شُرَكَاءَ خَلَقُوا كَخَلْقِهِ فَتَشَابَهَ الْخَلْقُ عَلَيْهِمْ قُلِ اللَّهُ خَالِقُ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ وَهُوَ الْوَاحِدُ الْقَهَّارُ. Say, who is the Rabb, the sustainer of the heavens and the earth? Say, it is God. Say, why then do you take for protectors others than Him, who have neither power to bring benefit nor harm even to themselves? Say, are the blind and the seeing equal? Or are the depths of darkness and the light equal? Or do they believe that there are partners to God that have created the like of what He creates, so that their creation seems indistinguishable from His? Say, God is the creator of all things, and He is the one, the all-compelling. Originally, I was thinking I could go through 16, 17, and 18, but as I started reading again and again and reflecting, I realized that all those three ayats were so intense, so packed up, that I ended up wondering if we could even finish ayah 16. Subhanallah, they're just amazing. Each one is just such a treasure. So by now, inshallah, hopefully, we have surrendered that indeed God is the only Rabb of all. We may wonder why it is still speaking to us, and we will ask those questions like, okay, we know, but last time we talked about Iman is not only knowing intellectually, it's not only information, and we may do accept the information, but it is more than that. It's something we believe in. We know, we have no doubt about, because a simple example will be if I'm in the middle of the street and someone says to me that a car is coming very fast, then if I believe only a little bit in the truth of that statement, I will immediately move. However, if I know all these things and don't live accordingly, then somehow that information, even though I don't reject it, I don't deny it, even though it seems true to me, it has not been digested. It's not part of who I am. It's not part of how I see and perceive the world. So something is still needs to be cleared. And that's why we can see the rahmah here, the compassion of our Rabb. And He's speaking to us again and again. It's not like just telling us, there it is. Don't you see that God is the Rabb of everything? So this ayah, in ayah 16, it's saying, asking us, okay, Who is the Rabb of the heavens and the earth? The answer is, it is God. And this means also that the audience, we who are still listening to this message, agree, we admit that it is God. And so it is telling us, why then do you take for protectors other beings other than him, things other than him? Why do you look for protections, for help with other things than him? And those protectors, those things that you have recourse to, they can neither, can't you see, they can't even benefit themselves. They don't have the power to benefit or harm even themselves. Like, what are you expecting from them? So this is, in a way, an invitation to affirm and confirm that there is no deity worthy of worship except him. It carries on, it says, are the blind and the seeing equal? Are the depths of darkness and the light equal? Or do they believe that there are partners to God? Like, okay, those protectors, or do you think really that there are partners, there are entities, forces besides God that can create the like of what he creates? So that their creation, the creation of those powers, those entities, seems indistinguishable from his? Like, you're confused now because all of them create things that are very similar? Say, God is the creator of all things. So it's giving us the solution. And we have to revise, look at our life, and do we live as though God is the creator of all things? And he is the one, the all-compelling. And this expression, the one, al-wahid al-qahhar, huwa al-wahid al-qahhar, appears 6 times in the Quran. One of it was in Surat Yusuf, alayhi salam, actually. And we talked about Qahhar being such a beautiful name, although it doesn't appear so at first. So this is an invitation to Tawheed, but genuine Tawheed. To confirm that there is nothing worthy of worship except him, since he alone creates everything, he alone sustains the heavens and the earth and all that is in them. He alone is their Rabb, our Rabb, and the disposer of all affairs. However, this ayah is also telling us that despite all this, there are still people that take as helpers others besides God or other than God and worship them. And here, worshipping means having hope in them, even though these entities do not have even the power to benefit or harm themselves, let alone those who seek their help. And of course, when we are worshipping, when we have hope in things other than God, in situations other than God, it's because we are in a state of ghafla. It's not like we know, we realize that they have no power to benefit or harm themselves or us, and we still do it. It's because in that state of ghafla, we completely disconnected from the source of everything, and we're attached. We live in that illusion that we are getting benefit from things, and so we seek their help. So expecting help or benefit from something or fearing it is a form of worship. Like, worship is not only a state of like when we are at the mosque and when we are during the prayers. Worship is a state of being. If you don't mind, I'll just close the window. So worship is a state of being, not only the form, including the form that we take. So when we believe in them, we worship them. And this includes also fearing the absence of that things. This is very important because that's the trap usually. We think it's not very important, but we fear the absence of something because we think that it is the source of the benefit, whereas actually it's only the benefit is sent together with that thing. But because we're not clear that they are created together, we think that one is making the other. Because usually things are not created haphazardly. They always, creation follows an order, like the shadows. And that's how we make sense of creation. And that's how we can read the messages in the ayat, in the signs. However, when we are unaware that they are ayat, bringing us messages, we often confuse the conjunction, the co-creation, the coming into being together of the so-called cause and effect, the cause and the benefit. We see them coming together, and so we imagine that one is making the other, or at least one is responsible for the presence of the other. And because of this illusion, we fear the absence of the cause, because when the cause is not there, the benefit doesn't appear. So that illusion is supported, it's strengthened, let's say, it gains strength because in the absence of the so-called causes, often the results also do not appear, are absent. This is, we talked about it many times before, and we gave the example of the bulb. It's like saying if the bulb breaks, then there is no light, therefore the bulb is the cause of light, or the switch is the cause of light. Whereas we know it's not true. We know that the bulb or the switch or the wire are all a part of the system. And actually the electricity is not, the source of the electricity is not in the house. It's coming from outside. So when we stop taking things for granted and reflect, as we are taught in the Quran, as we are asked to do in the Quran, we realize that this way of perceiving things is fallacious. It's not true, because every single thing is interconnected with the rest of the world, not only with few things, not with one thing, or with many, many things. Actually, each one is connected to the whole world. And the absence of any one related thing may lead to the absence of the result. And an easy example, a simple example is, for a plant to grow, it needs earth, water, air, sunlight. Actually, it needs even the earth, the globe of the earth, to be tilted in a certain way, so we have the seasons, and etc., etc. So it's the whole universe is needed for that plant to grow. But usually we only see the direct surrounding so-called causes. However, when we think about it, none of these factors, the earth, the water, the air, the sunlight, etc., is sufficient in itself for the result, for the growing to occur. They all exist in conjunction with one another. They all exist together with one another. And none of them has life, none of them has knowledge, none of them has power. All these qualities that are needed to grow a living plant. So just because when one of them, water is not there or air is not there, the plant dies, it just tells us that that's the system, the order through which the plant grows. It does not mean that air or water is making the plant, just like the bulb does not make electricity. And that's why in the Quran we're also reminded that none of those things, the earth, the water, the air, the sunlight, and so on and so forth, can create anything, since each one of them and every one of them is itself being created here and now. It says in Surah Al-Nahl in ayah 20, وَالَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ لَا يَخْلُقُونَ شَيْئًا وَهُمْ يُخْلَقُونَ. Those whom they invoke other than God create nothing, since they themselves are being created. So how does this situation apply to us here and now? If you think rationally, if we stop and think, it seems like unlikely that someone would worship anything besides God. So what does it mean? So let's go back to what the ayah is telling us here. It's asking us, why then do you take for protectors, for wali, for someone you trust, other than him, things other than him, who have neither the power to bring benefit nor harm even themselves? Subhanallah. So each one of us needs to stop and listen to their feelings. Someone else can't read this ayah for us. We can benefit from someone else's reflection, but unless I listen to my own feelings and reflect under the guidance of this ayah, in order to answer the question in this ayah, I won't benefit from this Quranic ayah. I have to, because this ayah is taking me back to a creational ayat, to my own being, to my own feelings, my own hopes and fears. And so each one of us has to do that. What's going on here? Do we really take others as protectors other than God? Do we have protectors? Do we have things that we're attached to, that we have hope in, that we hope they will bring us some benefits apart from God, independently from God? And actually, it's telling us, if you stop and really reflect, you will realize that they can't help you. They can't even help themselves. And here really, I can go on and share my reflections, but I think it will only make sense to you, the audience, when you actually actively participate. I propose to take money as an example. Why money came to my mind? Because I had discussions many years ago, and it was with some students, and they insisted that without money you couldn't live. So maybe that was taking it to the extreme, but how do you feel about money? Does it have the power to bring us benefit? Can it harm us? Or maybe we can think that its absence can harm us and it can bring us benefit. I don't know. So are we willing to ask ourselves why we're afraid of being without money, for instance? Is there anyone who is not? Or is there anyone who is? At different levels, of course. Some people are really scared, and some people are just a little bit anxious, and there are degrees, but we are all concerned at some degree or another about being without money. For instance, okay, I'm inviting you to actually share your thoughts and feelings now.
I guess like money and job are like part of the job is also for money. So like part of fearing not to have a job is fearing not to have money and not being able to meet your needs, and then fear of being in need for others to support you, and fear of not being dignified by having to ask for support from others. So I guess there is part of shirk in, at least in my heart, because these, like, as I'm thinking of money, I'm thinking of job, thinking of like what would I need, how would my needs be given. Then I think, oh, I don't want my dignity to be affected. I want, so then you can, and then I realize with this like train of thoughts that definitely, yes, definitely that we give money more power than it has, as if money gives dignity, or as if money gives gives your sustenance. Yes, so there is shirk there. Yeah.
At least there is our relationship with money is questionable, let's say. Because actually when we start questioning it, why is money, why do we even bother to, for instance, work for money? Actually, we're not working for money. We're working to get food, to get water, shelter, and other things. As you said, to take care of our needs. So money is important because it is the means to get the food and the water and the shelter and the safety, etc. But what we need is not the money itself, but the food, the water, the shelter. And do we have these needs? Yes, we do. So it's not like we're saying we don't have needs. But when we never ask these questions and we never see that my need is not the money, I mean, some people don't need as much money if they live in a farm. Maybe they have all their food and everything is being taken care of without getting money and going to the market and buying the food and paying for the water, etc. So when we don't ask the questions, we associate money, in this example, this is just an example, with those blessings, those things that are sent to us to fulfill our needs. And the needs are also part of the blessings, because if we had no needs, then nothing would be a blessing. We would be like a rock. Less need means less alive, less conscious, less aware of blessings and beauty and all the divine names. And so when we associate money with the blessings, without questioning the relationship, then we believe that money, as Alia just said, is indispensable, like is necessary to obtain those blessings, as though it were the source. No one says it is the source, but we act as though it is the source. It's not like this is what we say, but there is an underlying belief that is hidden from us. I mean, that's what it means, because if I act in fear of being moneyless, it means in my heart it is as though the money was the source of those blessings. When actually, if we stop and think about it, in itself it's only a means among others. And when we are not aware that it's only a means, then it starts getting in the way of our being grateful to God alone. Part of us says, yes, but if I didn't have the money, I wouldn't have been, living this life. So although we say Alhamdulillah, praise and thanks are due to God alone, part of us is saying, yes, however, There is, however, a but. You may say, yes, God is sending us the money, but if for some reason, there are lots of ayat, if for some reason the money or even the blessings are sent not in abundance, then we start complaining. And so this means that although we say that we know we should be asking for help and protection from God alone, practically that's not how we feel, therefore that's not how we live. Although ultimately the money or even the food can't do anything to us on its own. And even the money and the food and everything would have no meaning if we didn't have life. And life, our breathing, my breathing right now, has nothing to do with the money. All the money in the world would not make me breathe once I stop breathing. At least we can start from there, because there is part of us that is so resisting to surrender to that reality. So I find the breathing very, very powerful, because, okay, you got all the money you want, everything you want. If you are not breathing, you don't have life, you're not there, it has no meaning. And especially when it comes to money, it feels that like money is something palpable out there, but money is like, what is it? It's a virtual tool. It's not a real thing. It's a virtual tool, something in exchange for something else. Like we're exchanging actually things like commodities, products, services. You go, you have a job, you go, you teach, you are providing a service, and in exchange for that service, you're giving something called money, and with that something you can get other services and other products. And so the money is only the virtual exchange. And the bills, the banknotes may be palpable, maybe something physical, but they are part of that exchange. They are notes, like a promise that we will pay the bearer of the... It's like, if it was between individuals only, it would be like I write a note and saying, you clean my house, I'll come and paint your house, something like that. But because so many people are involved, it becomes complicated, so we can't do it between ourselves. It became a whole system. And at first, when banknotes were first introduced, they were a promise to pay the bearer in gold or in silver or in some commodity, something that existed in the world. And so even banks had to make sure that they could always pay their customers in, usually it was gold or silver, when they presented banknotes for payment. But eventually, now, in most places, money became accepted as a medium of payment in its own right. Maybe that's why people think money is, we make it bigger. It's like a god. Money now it's regulated and allowed by law. It doesn't. You don't have to have something in. How do you say?
Like in store, like
yeah,
something
in store, yeah, something that it
like
represents,
that.
something that represents its value. Now it's not like this anymore. There is no gold or silver standard or anything. It's by law. If it is recognized by a legal system to be valid, then it's okay. You can. It meets financial obligation, and that's why. There is backing, that's the word I was looking for. Like most currencies now, they have no backing in gold or in precious metals or in commodities. And so they have value only they call it by fiat, I think. I don't know if I'm saying the word right, which means that money derives value not from the backing that it represents, but from government regulation, from a law, unlike in the past where it was commodity money. It was based on a good, on a certain amount of gold or silver or something. So that's why now there is something called inflation. Because before, if you had only, let's say, a certain amount of gold, you have only that a certain amount of banknotes to represent it. But now the gold has been taken away, so by law, any government can increase the amount of banknotes. What it means, in a very, very, very simplistic way, I'm not the economist anyway. So if we have, let's say, $10 and 10 cakes, instead of gold, I'm taking cakes. We have 10 cakes, $10. Then one cake would cost $1. But if we print more money and we make it $20, then we still have only 10 cakes. Then the cake now will cost $2 each. And so what it means for the one who is the one who is working, if, for instance, I worked an hour to make $1, I could afford the whole cake. But when some federal bank prints more fiat money, suddenly money loses its value, and now I have to work 2 hours to make $2 in order to afford the same cake. Does it make sense? So actually the money before had a little bit was an exchange between products and services. Now it's not even like that. Now it's, because it can be printed, actually suddenly if they print more money, there is inflation, and suddenly the money in my pocket doesn't have the same value. I could buy a whole cake, now I can buy only half a cake. What happened to the other half? Someone took it from me without asking me. That's why the bank system and the interest system is haram in the Islamic law, because you can only get benefits by producing something, by offering a service. You can't make money without doing anything. Just print more money and make everyone else. Actually, what you're doing is pumping value from other people. Anyway, so you can see that I just wanted you to see how money is so virtual. It's a tool created by humans for some end. However, in our daily life, we talk about it as if it is itself creating things.
Yamina, can I make a point?
Yeah.
You know, in Surah Yusuf, the brothers, I think it's in the Quran or maybe it was in the Tafsir directly, they brought something like they would barter, you know, exchange.
Yes.
Yusuf alayhi salam's brothers,
yes,
when they came, they had bought some goods to exchange with others, with food.
Yeah.
Yusuf alayhi salam, and there was a
That's true.
I think it's mentioned in Surah Yusuf as well.
Yes, it is. It is. You're right.
Barter, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like when we had commodity money, it was more like an evolved way of barter. But now it's not even that. So, in any case, whether it's commodity money or fiat money is more illusory, actually, more virtual. But in any case, it's a tool only. At the end of the day, what we need is the ni'mah. And the mun'am, the provider, the helper, is God, and everything is in His hand. For instance, I have some skills, but no one seeks my skill, no one needs them. Then I say I am poor. But Allah may bring some people who not only need my skills, they really value them. Like this is seen easily in art. The same art may sell for $10 or for $1 million. According to what? If the people who are the person buying appreciates it, he will give it more. And so where does the difference come from? It's a blessing. The artist didn't work more, but the one who Allah sends him someone who really appreciated the art, and therefore now he became what we call wealthier, more blessed, has more blessings actually, because being blessed is not only with material goods. So we can see that it's actually, ultimately, it's all in the hand of God. Although everything is sent to us through means, just like food is a means, the tree is a means for the fruit, for instance, and so on and so forth. But the tree is not creating the fruit; they are created together. The fruit doesn't make me full and satisfied. The whole thing is created together. It can't. The poor fruit is actually being destroyed as I'm eating it. How can it do anything to me? It cannot. It doesn't have the power to even help itself and stop me from eating it. So these are things that our heart needs to be satisfied with. And it will be satisfied the more we reflect on these things and the more we observe things as signs. And so, for instance, you get to work suddenly from nowhere, and that work, even when you are doing the work, the intelligence, the power, the life, the inspiration, everything is given to me. And when you are in that state of awareness, in that state of ihsan, present to God's givenness and His generosity and His rahmah, then you see that when I am offering a service, I'm actually being the recipient of some gift from God, and I'm sharing it with others, and because of that, they are sharing their gifts with me. Some of them is giving me food, the farmer is giving me some of the food, and the other one is giving me something else, and all those skills and all those things that we are sharing with each other, they are actually all gifts from God, and we're only benefiting from it and sharing it with others. And the more we share, the more we get. But when we are not in that state of awareness, and when we are not aware that everything is a sign, and when we don't see things as ayat and as presence, carrying actually messages from God that He is the only one, the only generous, the only helper, the only provider, then we start imagining without actually thinking it, because you can't think it, but it feels as though things in themselves are important. It feels as though without money we would be starving. It feels as therefore money is very important. Therefore the job to get the money is very important. Or the job could be for money, could be to get attention, to get value for us as human beings. But all these things are our own perception, and unless we question our perceptions, we won't be able to see things as they are, and our heart won't be satisfied. And our heart can only be satisfied with the remembrance of God, with the remembrance of God as our Rabb, the Rabb of everything. And that's why we say again and again, and it's repeated again and again in the Quran, Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. What does Hasbunallah mean? God is enough for us. Do we really feel that God is enough for us? If we don't, then there is more reflection and istighfar to be made. Istighfar is very, very important here. Why? وَنِعْمَ الْوَكِيلِ. He is the best wakil. He is the best protector. Here, he said, what do you take other things as wakil? Why do you trust other things? So if God is enough for us, if He is the best protector, the best provider, then we put trust in Him alone, and we trust others in His name. We use money in His name. We eat the food in His name. So it doesn't mean that we don't need anything. We need Him. And how do we know we need Him? Because of my relationship with food, I understood that He is the Razzaq. Because someone might say, since God is Razzaq, then why do we need food? That question is fallacious, because this question is coming from someone who is only claiming that God is Razzaq. But if you confirm that God is Razzaq, as we are taught in the Quran, which is go and look at your food, فَلْيَنْظُرِ الْإِنسَانُ إِلَىٰ طَعَامِهِ, then when I go and reflect on the creation of my food, it is telling me, it is an ayah, it is like a mirror reflecting that its Rabb, its creator, is the only provider, the only Razzaq. He is the one who is providing me by means of that food. And that food itself knows nothing, cannot do anything. It is an ayah, it speaks about its provider. It is through it that I know my provider. So I don't ask, oh, so then why does he need food? He doesn't need food, I need it. I need food to know the creator of the food, my creator, my protector, the one who takes care of me, my host. And so then it says, the next part, it says, are the blind and the seeing equal? Or are the depths of darkness and the light equal? And here the mindless, the ghafil, who is ignorant of this reality, the reality of what we just talked about, that none is worthy of worship except Rabbul Alameen, that mindless person is like the blind. And it's interesting here because being blind and seeing, both of them refer to inner states of being, whereas darkness and light are out there in the world. However, the inner and the outer are related. We have no idea about the outer world except through our inner perception. And so to the blind, it's all the same, whether there is darkness or light out in the world. He's always going to see darkness because he's blind. So only the seeing can appreciate the light. Only the knowing, the arif, the one who has ma'rifah, the muhsin, can appreciate that all blessing, everything, is from God alone. And it takes us back to God. And so the muhsin can live in peace and trust of the merciful and generous provider, the Razzaq and Wakil, protector, with no fear of anything else, since they're aware that everything is an ayah, everything is a message from their Rabb, a gift from Rabbul Alameen. Subhanallah, it's so simple, yet when it comes to surrendering to this reality, we make it so hard. Astaghfirullah. So the ayah carries on and tells us, or do they believe that there are partners to God that create the like of what He creates, so that their creation seems indistinguishable from His? Say, God is the creator of all things. So in this ayah, we're invited to reflect on the processes of creation, or the process of creation. But I'm thinking processes because usually we think of human being and animals and maybe like beings creating things and God creating things. And this has been the subject of an intense debate in Islamic theology, as well as philosophy actually, in Kalam. So the conclusion here in the ayah, it says, God creates everything. Say, God is the creator of everything, of all things. And this has been interpreted in different ways. The majority understood this to mean that all beings, all creation are God's creation. Directly and indirectly, doesn't matter. And so this leads us to the question, if you can think of something else, share it. But as far as I'm concerned, what comes to my mind is, does anyone or anything create, or can anyone, in the sense, can they create? Not, I may have the capacity to create and not create, not in that sense. Like, can anyone create, maybe is better. And so it depends on what we mean by creation, obviously. Some talked about creation out of nothing, and some talked about creation out of matter. So if we think of anything other than God creating, in the Quran we have texts, ayat, like ayah 191 in Surah Al-A'raf, Surah 7, and where we're told, أَيُشْرِكُونَ مَا لَا يَخْلُقُ شَيْئًا وَهُمْ يُخْلَقُونَ. Do they associate with Him, with God, those who create nothing while they are themselves being created? So in here, it's clear that nothing creates. However, in ayah 49 of Al Imran, Surah 3, Isa alayhi salam says, إني قد جئتكم بآية من ربكم أني أخلق لكم من الطين كهيئة الطير فأنفخ فيه فيكون طيرا بإذن الله وأبرئ الأكمه والأبرص وأحيي الموتى بإذن الله وأنبئكم بما تأكلون وما تدخرون في بيوتكم إن في ذلك لآية لعلكم إن كنتم مؤمنين. Sorry. So this is Isa alayhi salam, Jesus, saying, I have come unto you with a sign, with an ayah from your Rabb. And what is this ayah? He's going to say, I create for you out of clay. So he uses the word inni akhluqu, I create for you. But afterwards he says, I do all this by God's permission, bi'idhnillah. And I heal the blind and the leper and bring the dead back to life, bi'idhnillah, by God's permission. And at the end he says, behold, in all this there is indeed an ayah, a sign for you, if you are believers. So it's a sign for the believers who know that He can only create that by God's permission. It means there are two creations. One that is directly the creation God creates, and one where, for instance, human being create bi-idhnillah, and it's not the same creation, because in this ayah it says, did their creation, are you confused? So their creation seems indistinguishable from God's creation? And this has been debated for a long time. So some scholars understood the relationship between the creation, the universe, and God and the creator, let's say, as direct. And others, especially the philosopher, thought of it as indirect and mediated. So they saw things as creators for themselves. And that by God's permission, they understood it in in a way saying, God gave me the power, that's the permission, now I create what I want. And that was a big issue. And the majority didn't agree with that. So the first group, they focused on the notion of creation out of nothing. And the second, they wanted to emphasize creation out of matter as an alternative. And we will see that it is not an alternative, because creation out of matter is part of creation out of nothing. And creation out of nothing, which means creation out of nothing, happens within creation out of matter. Like when there is creation out of matter, for instance, we are told, God says, وَجَعَلْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ حَيَّ. We made everything alive with water, by means of water. Water, it seems at first that it is creation out of matter, like water is used in the creation. However, it is not true, because water itself needs to be sustained and created while life is being given to me, to a plant being water. They are created all at once. So creation out of matter makes sense only within the notion of creation out of nothing. This is the majority of especially Ash'aris and Mutakallimun. And this is also understood because if we learn to see the creation as it is described in the Quran, which is completely another subject, related of course, but something that needs to be reflected on, a very, very important point. It is part of the process of learning to see things, to perceiving everything as an ayah. As an ayah means coming directly from God and being at the command of God. It doesn't exist on its own, for its own. It cannot. Nothing can sustain itself. And this means that in another way, we can say that God is the sole only cause of every single thing, every single being, event. And so creation arises from nothing as at God's command, be. It says in the Quran, it says be. إنما قولنا لشيء إذا أردناه أن نقول له كن فيكون. In Surah An-Nahl it says, whenever we will anything to be, we only say to it, be, and it is. God says, I say be, and it is. That's it. Like, don't think that things are making things themselves. So as far as creation out of nothing is concerned, shall we leave it here and do this next week, inshallah? How these two creations are related to each other?
Yes, I think
that's enough to.
Yeah, that is a big dose.
Yes.
Big dose, Yamina, mashallah.
Yeah, I think, and these are only few things. If you look at the Islamic tradition, it's very, very rich. People thought about lots of things, even like be and it is, and its relationship to God creating through laws. Not like us, we can't create through laws, we create one by one. SubhanAllah, is really, there is much food for those who are willing to reflect. However, we don't need to know all the details if we are genuinely, if we are really make the intention to open our hearts, if we make istighfar whenever we realize that something is going against the surrender and the trust, then we don't know how, but Allah will gift us with that ihsan, inshallah. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين آمين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Can I make a point? I wanted to share something because I read a book on Reason and Revelation, and by Mr. Avery, and he was mentioning a very beautiful hadith. He said there are only three things in the world. First, we know the two things. One is the creator and the rest of it is creation. But the third thing, the Quran is in the third category and it came from Allah and will go back to Allah. Because I'm sure you know from history that there was a conflict between whether Quran was created or, you know. So in that context, the hadith says that there are two. One is the creator. The rest of the things in the universe is creation. And Quran is, you know, from Allah and it will go back to Allah, you know. So the Quran is totally a different category. You can't say it's a creation. You can't say it's, you know. But just wanted to share that point that I read.
It depends also what people understand by Quran. In that, there was a discussion because Quran is to be understood that way. Then, if you are referring to the book, to the words, to the sound, to the literal meaning, some people were referring to that and sent something. Some people were not referring to that and sent something else. You see what I mean? It's again, we may be sometimes using the same word but meaning different things. And when we were talking about the signs, there is the signifier and the signified. The signifier is the created part. The signified, even as far as the creation is concerned, the signified looks to ghaib, looks to the Asma al-Husna, and therefore the signified, the created part, points and indicates and mirrors and reflects the non-created, the infinite, and the that looks to the divine.
Right. Like your Tawheed, the basis of Tawheed is one creator and rest of the things are creation. So, you know. The other thing, I just did some research. You know, that word which translated as barter in Surah Yusuf is badatan. The root word is bad.
No, bida'atan is not the barter. Bida'a is the merchandise itself.
Right, so it has come 7 times in Quran and 6 times in Surah Yusuf. So that's the word you were looking for, like you said, back up, you know. But that's the barter when they brought the goods to exchange with the food.
Yes.
6 times it's in the Surah Yusuf and 1 in 30 verse.
Okay, does anyone else want to comment before we thank Sister Yamina and conclude for this week? Okay, I guess Yamina, mashallah, the level of information that we're receiving, mashallah, is becoming more and more deeper. May Allah give you a lot of barakah for bringing this kind of discussion to us.
Usually it's read there. Usually with these verses I read, like the mushrikun, they commit shirk, they do this. But following the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, when we read the Quran, we're reading God's addressing us and teaching us, and it's a rahmah. Because there are things that we don't know, that we're not even aware of. You know, we say there are things that we know and things that we don't know. But there are also things that we don't know that we don't know. That's what the Quran is teaching us. We're not even aware when the one who commits shirk is not aware of it, because the audience, assuming a good intention, we wouldn't do that, commit shirk. intentionally. However, if the outcome of our life, if our life is not pure bliss, if it's not like Yusuf alayhi salam, whatever is happening outwardly, horrible or very good, he is always connected to God and he is always serene and peaceful and trusting and connected. If we are not living in that state of ihsan, then what is disconnecting us? When we disconnect from God, we connect with things themselves as if they themselves are the source. And so these ayat, when we read them as addressing ourselves, addressing us, then we can benefit from them and we can feel how compassionate our Rabb is. And the benefit is in this world, we benefit from it, and in Akhirah forever, for our eternal life, inshallah. And it's, to me, all these things are a reminder for making istighfar and how healing istighfar is. And istighfar, from one point of view, encompasses all this. This reflecting on this ayat and making that tazkiyah is a means of istighfar, inshallah. Is a way of making istighfar as well, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair, Yamina. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make all of this beautiful work, inshallah, a means for you, inshallah, to raise up to a status that you cannot even dream of possible, inshallah. And may Allah make us all, inshallah, achieve what our heart yearns for and be accepted, inshallah. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. I will, as no one now is commenting, I will end the session, and after I finish, ask Andrea to stop the recording.